The photograph was all Asher Cole had. Soft blonde curls, a gentle smile, and blue eyes that seemed to hold a hint of hopeful promise. He stood on the train platform, the biting December wind whipping snow around his worn boots, watching the dark shape of the locomotive grow larger against the grey winter sky. It was Christmas Eve, and in minutes, he would meet Eleanor, the woman who would become his wife. But when the train hissed to a stop and the door slid open, the woman who stepped down onto the snowy platform was nothing like the photograph. Her hair was a cascade of polished black, braided down her back. Her hands, though gloved, were clearly small and deft. And when she looked at him, her dark, almond-shaped eyes held no gentle promise, only a guarded intelligence that seemed to take in everything at once. She was Chinese, a stranger in a land that was not always kind to strangers. She clutched a small, worn satchel, her simple wool coat insufficient against the Wyoming winter. The station master stared, as did the few others braving the cold. Asher felt the ground shift beneath him. "You're not Eleanor," he said, the words coming out as a puff of white air. The woman met his gaze directly. Her English was accented but clear. "You are Mr. Asher Cole?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm, cutting through the wind's howl. She didn't wait for his answer. "I am my. We must speak." "Not here." The raw certainty in her voice stopped the angry questions forming on his lips. This wasn't a simple mistake. This was something else entirely. The letters, he thought, his mind reeling. 6 months of letters detailing a shared future, plans for the ranch, the quiet life they would build. "Where is she?" Asher demanded, his voice rough with confusion and a rising sense of betrayal. Mai's jaw tightened. "There has been a change." She glanced at the curious onlookers, then back at him, a silent plea in her eyes. "Please. Your place." Bringing this stranger to his ranch, to the home he had so carefully prepared for Eleanor, with a small evergreen tree decorated in the corner and a fire crackling in the hearth, felt like a profound violation. But the alternative, making a scene on a public platform on Christmas Eve, felt worse. Something in her urgent posture told him this was not a trick, but a warning. "My wagon's this way," he grunted, turning on his heel. Mai followed without a word, her small frame surprisingly steady as she climbed onto the wagon seat. The ride to his ranch passed in a tense, frozen silence. The world was a canvas of white and grey, the only sound the crunch of the wagon wheels on the packed snow and the jingle of the harness. Asher could feel her presence beside him, a compact bundle of secrets and unspoken fears. He had prepared for a bride, he had received a mystery. His ranch house sat nestled in a valley, a sturdy silhouette against the snow-laden pines, smoke curling from its stone chimney like a welcoming hand. As they drew closer, Asher felt a pang of foolishness for the holly he'd hung on the door. Inside, the warmth of the fire was a stark contrast to the cold outside. Mai moved toward the hearth, her hands outstretched to the flames. She looked small and out of place against the rugged, masculine interior of his home, the hand-carved furniture, the rifle mounted over the fireplace, the kitchen table set for two. "You expected someone else," she said, her back to him. "It wasn't a question." "I expected the woman I've been writing to for half a year," he replied, his voice tight. "I expected my future wife." Mai turned to face him, and in the flickering firelight, he saw the deep exhaustion etched around her eyes. "Eleanor did not write the letters," she said softly. "I did. For her." The word struck Asher with the force of a physical blow. "Why?" "Because she was afraid. And because I thought this was the only way to save her." Mai's composure finally began to fray. "Our father is a merchant in San Francisco. He fell into debt with a powerful man named Gideon Blackwood. The marriage to you was the arrangement to clear that debt. Eleanor was the price." Asher's anger began to curdle into a grim understanding. He wasn't just a husband, he was a solution to a problem he knew nothing about. "So you wrote the letters. You created this woman I thought I knew." "I wrote what Eleanor told me of her dreams," Mai whispered, her eyes glistening. "A quiet life, away from the city, with a good man. I believed you were that man. I still do." But Blackwood never intended for the marriage to happen.
What are you talking about?
Where is she now? Mai took a deep breath, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. 3 days ago, Blackwood came to our home. He told Eleanor things about you. Vicious lies. She met his gaze, and he saw fear in her eyes, not of him, but for him. He said you were a cruel man. That you used Chinese laborers on your ranch and treated them like animals, that one had died from your neglect. He had documents, forged letters from supposed witnesses. It was enough to terrify her. Asher felt a cold rage spread through his chest. He had 2 men working for him, both good, hard-working people he treated like family. The lie was designed to be cruel, to isolate him. It's a lie. I know, Mai said. But Eleanor was already a prisoner of her father's debt. Blackwood's lies were just another cage. He took her and her younger brother, Daniel. He told her if she did not disappear, if she did not let him handle you, he would harm them both. The pieces of a dark puzzle began to slot into place. This wasn't just about a broken marriage arrangement. What does he want? Your land, Mai said, her voice barely a whisper. He knew about your correspondence. He used it. He found out a new railroad spur is planned to come through this valley. Your ranch is directly in its path. Blackwood wants the land, and he plans to frame you for Eleanor's disappearance. To get it, she reached into her satchel and pulled out a slim leather-bound ledger. Before they took her, Eleanor slipped this to me. It's Blackwood's. It contains details of his plans, his associates. She wanted me to bring it to you, to warn you. As if summoned by her words, the sound of hoofbeats echoed through the snowy quiet, growing steadily closer. Both of them moved to the frosted window. Through a small clear patch, they saw 2 riders approaching the house, their forms dark against the failing light of Christmas Eve. Are you expecting anyone? Mai asked, her voice tight with tension. Asher shook his head, his hand moving instinctively toward the rifle above the fireplace. Not on a night like this. He recognized the lead horse, a sturdy grey gelding. It's Sheriff Brody. Mai tensed beside him. Is that good or bad? Before Asher could answer, the riders pulled up. Asher Cole, the sheriff's voice boomed, thick with authority. I need a word. Asher opened the door, stepping onto the porch with Mai just behind him. The cold air hit him again, sharp and unforgiving. Sheriff Brody's face was grim, his mustache peppered with snow. His deputy stayed mounted, his hand resting near his pistol. What's this about, Brody? Asher asked, though a sick feeling was already churning in his gut. Brody's eyes flickered to Mai, a flicker of contempt in his gaze. I have a warrant for your arrest, Cole. On the complaint of Gideon Blackwood. Charges of abduction. Seems your mail-order bride, a Miss Eleanor Vance, has gone missing. Blackwood is very concerned for her safety. I am Eleanor's friend. Mai stepped forward, her chin high. She is not missing. She was taken by Gideon Blackwood himself. That's not the story I have, Brody said dismissively. The story I have says you lured a woman out here, and when she didn't show, you took this one instead. His gaze on Mai was insulting. Right now, I need you to come with me. Peacefully. The carefully neutral tone, the way his deputy avoided eye contact, it was all a performance. This wasn't about justice. It was the closing of a trap. Asher looked at Mai, at the ledger clutched in her hand. Brody, Asher said, his voice low and dangerous. You've been sheriff here for 5 years. You helped me file the deed on this land. You know better than anyone what it's worth, especially now. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Brody's hand shifted closer to his gun. But before he could move, Mai spoke, her voice clear and sharp as breaking ice. Sheriff, before you make a terrible mistake, you should know that Mr. Blackwood is not as careful as he thinks. She opened the ledger. I have records here. Records of your meetings with him at the hotel in town. November 10th, discussing Mr. Cole's land survey. November 28th, accepting payment to handle any local complications. December 15th, finalizing the plan to use Eleanor's disappearance to arrest Mr. Cole. Brody's face went pale. That's slander. You have no proof. It's all here, Mai said, her finger tracing a line in the book. In his own hand. Dates, amounts, plans. Including the plan to have you seize this ranch by the new year. The deputy shifted in his saddle, his eyes wide. He was a young man, and this was clearly more than he'd signed up for. Sheriff, is this true? Brody's face hardened, his desperation turning to malice. She's a liar. Arrest them both. His hand shot for his gun, but Asher was faster. He shoved Mai behind him as he lunged forward, grabbing the barrel of the sheriff's pistol and wrenching it skyward. The shot exploded into the evening air, a deafening crack in the sacred quiet of Christmas Eve. The deputy, stunned into action, drew his own weapon but hesitated, unsure where to aim. In that moment of confusion, Asher slammed the cabin door shut, throwing the heavy bar across it. They were trapped, but for the moment, they were safe. The barn, Asher said, breathing heavily. There's a hidden cellar door under the hayloft. My father built it. We can get out that way and take the horses. They moved quickly, Asher grabbing his rifle and a heavy coat for Mai. Through the back window, they could see Brody and his deputy regrouping, their shouts muffled by the thick log walls. The cellar led to a narrow, snow-covered path behind the barn. Under the cover of the swirling snow and deepening twilight, they saddled 2 horses. Where do we go? Asher asked, swinging into the saddle. Mai held up the ledger, her expression grim but resolute in the moonlight. The ledger mentions his base of operations. An abandoned mining camp in the Whisperwind Mountains, about 15 miles north. He's holding Eleanor and Daniel there. Asher's jaw clenched. That's rough country. Especially in this storm. It is where they are, she said simply, her gaze unwavering. We are all they have. He looked at this woman, this stranger who had traveled 1,000 miles to deliver a warning, who now stood ready to ride into a blizzard to face down a dangerous man for the sake of people she loved. He had been waiting for a woman of gentle promises. Instead, he had found one of unbreakable courage. All right, he said, a new determination settling in his heart. Let's go get them back. They urged their horses into the blinding snow, 2 figures against a vast and unforgiving wilderness, riding away from the false promise of a peaceful Christmas and toward a dangerous, uncertain dawn. The ride was a brutal battle against the elements. The wind howled through the canyons, and the snow fell so thick they could barely see a few feet ahead. But Mai, guided by the details she'd memorized from the ledger, navigated with an uncanny certainty. They found the camp huddled in a narrow, sheltered box canyon just as the first light of Christmas morning broke through the storm clouds. 2 men stood guard outside a large, dilapidated cabin, stamping their feet against the cold. 2 guards, Asher whispered from their hiding spot in the rocks above. Blackwood and at least 1 other will be inside. Eleanor and Daniel will be in the smallest, most secure building, Mai surmised, pointing to a small shack with a barred window. He will want them separate. The plan was simple and desperate. They would create a diversion to draw the guards away, then Asher would deal with them while Mai freed the prisoners. He found a stack of old, dry timbers nearby. Lighting a small bundle with his flint and steel, he tossed it onto the pile. Within moments, flames licked up the side of an old, empty shed, casting a wild, dancing light against the snow. As the guards shouted and ran toward the fire, Asher moved. He was silent and swift, a shadow against the grey morning light. He took down both men without a sound, using the butt of his rifle. Just as he finished, the main cabin door burst open and Gideon Blackwood emerged, a pistol in his hand, his face a mask of fury. "Cole," he roared, spotting Asher. "I should have known that lying chit would run to you." Inside the hostage shack, Mai was already at work, prying the rusty lock from the door with a tire iron she'd found. The door creaked open to reveal Eleanor and a pale, shivering boy huddled together on a straw mattress. "Mai!" Eleanor gasped, tears of relief streaming down her face. We have to go now, Mai urged, helping them to their feet. As they stumbled out into the snow, the canyon erupted in gunfire. Blackwood and his remaining man had pinned Asher behind a stack of old mining carts. Mai pushed Eleanor and Daniel toward the cover of the rocks. "Stay here," she commanded, then turned back toward the fight. She saw Asher run out of ammunition, forced to duck as Blackwood advanced on him, a triumphant sneer on his face. Mai didn't think. She scooped up a heavy, half-frozen log and, with a strength born of desperation, ran toward the fight. She swung the log with all her might into the back of Blackwood's knees. He cried out in pain and surprise, stumbling forward. It was the opening Asher needed. He lunged, tackling Blackwood to the ground. The fight was brutal and short. When it was over, Blackwood was unconscious, and his last man had surrendered. By midday, the storm had passed. The sun shone brightly on a world blanketed in pristine white snow. They rode back to the ranch, a strange and weary procession, Asher and Mai leading the way, Eleanor and Daniel following, and their prisoners bound and trailing behind. The young deputy, his conscience having won out, met them on the trail, ready to arrest the real criminals and take their statements. That evening, the ranch house was quiet. Eleanor and Daniel, warm and safe, were asleep in the guest room. The decorated evergreen in the corner no longer seemed foolish, but a symbol of hope. Asher stood on the porch, watching the last rays of Christmas sunlight paint the snowy peaks in hues of pink and gold. Mai came to stand beside him, a steaming mug of coffee in each hand. She passed one to him, their fingers brushing. "Thank you, Asher," she said softly, "for believing me." "You were the one who was brave," he replied, his voice filled with a quiet awe. "You risked everything to come here." They stood in comfortable silence for a long moment, the world peaceful around them. The future he had planned for was gone, shattered by deceit and violence. But as he looked at the resilient, intelligent woman beside him, he felt no sense of loss. He had ordered a bride based on a photograph and a collection of pretty words. He had received a partner, forged in fire and ice. "The letters you wrote," he said, turning to her. "You wrote of dreams for a quiet life. Were they Eleanor's dreams, or yours?" A small, genuine smile touched Mai's lips for the first time. "Perhaps," she said, her dark eyes meeting his in the twilight, "they were ours." The wrong bride had arrived on Christmas Eve, but as the first star appeared in the clear, cold sky, Asher Cole knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his soul, that she was exactly the right woman.